because, you know, you don't want to get into that situation where somebody is saying, well, they called you, and then what else did they say to you while you were on the phone and all the other types of?
Yep. You talked about the weather.
Yeah.
And my route.
That's right.
You talked about the weather over my route because you was concerned.
But
I bet we should.
yeah, but it's a lot better.
I feel like we should start every meeting with the American Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you, everyone.
It's not necessary, but thank you.
It's not, but. I pledge allegiance to the flag
Of
The United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Call the order, roll call.
Charlie Dean,
Here.
Carrie Werning,
Here.
Derwin Smothers,
Sure.
Ron Engel,
Yep.
Richard Taylor.
Here.
Joanne Welch is absent. She called in, medical issue. Sydney Reagan is running late. Tom Pence is absent. He called in on vacation. Derry Cummins is also absent. He called in medical issue.
First thing we have is a presentation with a brief announcement.
Oh, okay. Good. Okay, it's always good to have all of you. We've had a good discussion going on around here, but nothing about the charter review. You asked us to put together certain documents this past week, and I've kind of tried to put those together for you. The first one is a document that we provided to the mayor and the commission as it related to certain questions that that are very common to be asked about charters and charter review, and so that was the kind of the focus of the document, and also it was the opportunity for the commission, the city commission, to provide this body with some input into, are there areas of the charter that they wanted you to focus on also. So it was, so that was the first document that we provided to the commission, and you received it also. The second one you asked us to look at was related to form of government. Let me say this, and I'm going to say this about the former Charter Review Commission. Y'all did a very good job of outlining the powers and authorities of both groupings, the city commission, as well as for the city administrator. And so from that perspective, I saw that you looked like you did quite a bit of work, quite a bit of research, of kind of that division between what the commission is supposed to be doing and what the administrator is supposed to be doing. So I thought I would start off with that because as you go back and you begin to do some comparisons, you can begin to look and say, well, they did a pretty good job of outlining each groupings of what each group was responsible for and so forth.
That was our biggest contention that we had. I mean, everything else went flat, but that was our biggest contention at that time.
Right.
Before that, it was a commission. Commissioners had all the power.
Right. Okay. And see, okay, what you set up is actually, you know, it's based upon the corporate model, where, and same thing with the council manager form, it's based upon corporate model. Okay, the major difference in your charter and the council manager charter is that your administrator, one, is also the city clerk. And although in my last position, I held the position of city clerk also, but that was for budgetary purposes, not necessarily for anything else, but I had other people that did the work itself. So that was the second.
Tell you a little funny story, and we wanted to have a city manager, but everybody determined the city couldn't afford one. So we put all the work on the city administrator.
Okay.
That was the committee's thinking we couldn't afford the city manager. I mean, 10 years ago, look at the budget was very small here.
Right. Well, I'm aware of cities smaller than this that have council manager form, but it's not unusual to see the administrator manager also designated as the clerk, and usually it surrounds the budget issues and things of that sort. Yeah.
One of the other challenges that we had at that time with our sitting city clerk is experience. You saw that. I was there. Now today, that's changed dramatically. Thank you, Jerome.
Yeah.
That should basically be a good input for us with any future direction. Charlie, you weren't here. I don't know what your status was at the time. But anyway, we had a challenge at that time sitting up there because we were basically making the determination that our city clerk would have budgetary, run city offices kind of stuff, everything from roads, streets, police, all those, everything basically. Because at that time, I was the police commissioner, Mayor Gibson was in charge of the office, Hyatt was in charge of this and this and this, and Biddle was in charge of the Parks and Recreation. And that's what we took away from them, basically. And
We did away with the commission type.
that's what we gave it back. We made that decision. It was a tough one. Because, like I said, the challenge at that time was giving that responsibility to one person. Now today, that's changed dramatically. I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yeah. Okay. Today, by the way, okay, so and then the other item that we ask y'all to do is to look at your current charter and begin to look at which of the articles that you really want to focus on. Because there are certain articles in the charter that probably are not, you're not going to bother those articles, and you could spend a lot of time discussing things that you're not going to change and things like that, and only focus on those areas of the charter. When you really get into the guts of your charter, basically it's around the powers of the mayor, the powers of the city commission, the authority that you've given your administrator, the appointment of the city attorney, and then everything else sort of revolves around those four issues right there. And so, kind of when you look at the charter, you may say, okay, we don't want to look at section, Article 1 or Article 2, but it's kind of making that determination. Where are you going to spend your time? Because you can really spend a lot of time on articles that you just, that are really not really important. Okay, one article in your charter that is sort of unique and that relates to police. Okay, let me just say this, don't touch that. Okay, from my perspective. Okay.
Don't touch it.
Don't touch that one, because even though it's very unique, that's always a touchy issue when you go out there in private with those people, and especially those people out in the community.
I can help with that a little bit if you'd like.
Huh?
I could help with that just a little bit if you'd like.
We have till 5 o'clock before on today, so.
I'll make it quick. I'm the one that made the decision to all of them. And at that time, the next motion came to, we disbanded, but we also basically took all of the police equipment at that time, everything, and sold it to the sheriff. Cars, bullets, everything. For the city, we made a determination back then, for the city to come back and bring another police department, it's gonna cost $1 million. We don't have that. So that may help.
But all it says in your charter, y'all want a safe community. And it tells those people there, that's what you want. That's just my interpretation of what it says. It doesn't say that you're gonna have a police department, it doesn't do any of that. It just says you want a safe community. And what I usually find, anytime I'm messing with a safe community language, it usually raises a lot of issues that just really are unnecessary. But that is a unique provision of your charter. Okay, at this point, I would like to look at the questions that that question memorandum. I think Commissioner Dean, you asked, kind of go through those questions and say, are there ones that we just want to mark off and we don't want to even have a discussion about or any things like that because they really are not germane to us. Now that memorandum was drafted as a generic kind of memorandum. This is things that generally people you may see in city charters, and some of them you may not even want to even talk about, because your charter is going to be unique. Even though you may see similarities, there are some things that, for example, term limits. Some charters have term limits in their charter, others don't. So it's one of those types of things. And then that raises the question that what constitutes a term? And usually if you have term limits in your charter, you've then got to explain what constitutes a term. Because, for example, if somebody resigns and now you're appointing somebody, when do you have to call a special election and when do you not have to call a special election? And those usually how you define term. Now, I was trying to remember. Oh, yeah, because yours has a discussion of vacancy in your charter.
Experienced that once so far.
Yeah, so it's one of those questions, usually that the discussion of term really relates around when you know, about creating vacancies, but it also goes back to your term limits.
Now, I got a question. Okay, when we're talking about term limits and the commission, right now, all of our commissioners are at large.
Correct.
Okay, now, I'm wondering if it would not, and this is just something I'm throwing out, if we do not need to have zones commissioners. And the reason I'm saying that is because at the present, you've got Lighthouse Cove, you got Indian Harbor, you've got another 100 and something houses going up off of Gaines, between Gaines and US 1. You got 400 and something houses planned for south of here. Okay, it would be very easy for one of these segments to take control of the city commission, okay, and do what they wanted to do. Now, the key would be, where do we divide it up? Okay, we would have to look at the voting populace on where it needs to be divided. But, and because sitting on this committee right here, and I'll get off of it, we got Mr. Smothers, we got Mr. Taylor, we got Ms. Carey, all from Indian Harbor. Okay, well, if we had 3 from Indian Harbor sitting on the commission at one time, they could pretty much roll everything they wanted towards Indian Harbor. So that's something that I've got a question, and when we got in there, I didn't see anything that you had put down on that, that regarded that. They are stuff in the different things.
Right, in my note, I provided in the form of government discussion I did cover that because you can go everything from single member districts, okay, to continue at large. And then there is this hybrid over here that, that some cities use, is that they have districts, but you have to live in the district, but the city as a city-wide votes on all the elected officials. That is a hybrid between the at-large and the just districts. The difference between the two, if you're just in a district, only those people in that district vote for you.
Right.
Okay, the danger of that is, do they lose perspective of the city and they only worry about their area? At the same time, you want, okay, in the hybrid form, the advantage of that is that you've got people that live in that district, but they have to take a citywide perspective in order to be elected.
I like that.
Yeah.
I do like that.
Okay, so the hybrid is one of the groupings out there that you will see a lot in city charters.
Now, with a hybrid, in that type of a scenario, if you set up sections of the town, would it eliminate having to live in that specific district or area?
In the hybrid form, you have to live in the district.
Okay.
In the hybrid form.
And that's my only issue that I have with it. I think it's a good idea for each commissioner to, per se, represent an area of the town for those citizens to be able to come to them and say, hey, Charlie, I got a problem on the north end. You're my representative, you know, how do you go about taking care of it or bring the issue to it? But
Yeah, and I don't.
narrows down people who are going to be able to campaign per se, or run for office, shall we say?
Yeah, and you might end up not having anybody out of that district that wanted to run. Okay, at that point, then you'd have to come up with, would it be in an at-large, you know,
Well,
seat?
absolutely, it should be at large.
Well, normally, what you're gonna find in the hybrid form, it's still based upon populations. Your districts are still made on population.
Right.
So there would be, most cities use what they call a districting commission, composed of citizens who come in and they then work on the maps and they try to get the district's level population wise. And so you could do something like that. There's also the other kind of out of that hybrid model, depending upon, the mayor always is at large.
At large.
Okay, so in any of the representation models, unless you go back and say the mayor would be elected by the body. Now, I would not recommend that because you've already got used to this form, and somebody would start saying, well, you're trying to take something away or by the way.
We did have that years ago, yes.
Yeah, we had that.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Now, another version of the hybrid model is a combination, like the county council does, the combination of, they have a grouping of members that are elected by district, and then they have two at large. One of them is the chair, and then they have an at-large member. So, you know, there's some variations of that particular model. You know, and so the hybrid though tries to connect a specific representative, and I'm not trying to sell one or the other, but it tries to connect somebody out here that's, so if I live in that neighborhood, they can pick up the phone and call and saying, okay, hey, I've got that issue.
I kind of like the idea myself. Basically, the answer is that you'd have 4 districts because your mayor
Yeah.
would be at large.
Exactly.
So that creates 4 separate districts. But my question about that is that we're a growing community. 400 homes down here is not going to be represented for another 2 years. Glenn Storch has a property north of town. That one's not gonna be ready for another year and a half, 2 years. So here's a question. Do we have the capability with a relative time frame of making a suggestion of that? Say it has to be done within this time frame based on these additional communities.
Well,
Because if we did it today, I mean, you'd have lopsided.
I can't, and I disagree, because today we have X number of people, okay? We have X number of residents, okay? Glenn Storch might fall over dead tomorrow, and might never get, out under the, this one here might never fall, I mean, it might fall on its face too, depending on the economy. You gotta go with what you got today. We can go back and adjust the charter anytime within that 10 years. Okay, that charter can be, it don't have to wait 10 years. But what I'm saying is you go ahead and do what you gotta do today, and then if you got the growth that we think is coming, then you back up,
That's my point was.
but you go ahead and do it today. You divide it today, okay, in my opinion, with what you got.
Right. Normally, what you would see is it sets up a hybrid form. Okay, and then it says, okay, we're going to elect it this way, and the charter does not have the boundaries of the district. Okay, the charter just sets up that this is how we do it, and then you can say, okay, there will be a boundary or a districting commission or something like that to come and bring back recommendations. And then what I've found is that normally that commission is appointed for a 10-year period, and that during that 10-year period, usually at least at the 5-year mark, they come back and look to see if the boundaries are still somewhat equal, and then they can make a recommendation of how those boundaries are adjusted.
Right.
Okay?
5 years would work. I wouldn't have a problem with that.
You know, and I don't either. I just think we need to go with what we got today. If we get to that, okay, that's,
The reason why is because our commissioners are basically 4-year terms.
Right.
They're balanced. So 5 years would like cut it in there. I don't have a problem with 5 years.
yeah.
Well, we're not at that point of trying
Yeah,
to
no.
decide that. Okay, so what I've written down from the discussion, and which is representation for the commission, I've got the 3 options that are there: single member, at large, hybrid. And then the hybrid has some variations. It could be all 4 of the commissions, it could be 3, it could be whatever, how you, every governing body that has the hybrid is somewhat different, okay? But the real key in the hybrid is it combines the logic of somebody looking citywide and having to run citywide, but they've also got that specific person in that neighborhood that the people can call. That's the advantage of the hybrid.
So your commissions would be still voted at large, but then you would have a committee to sit.
You got,
They have to live in the district.
Right.
who would monitor that and enforce it?
Well,
And there's people who
Okay.
lives here, that was
okay, if they move,
the election
if they
commission.
move out of the district, they vacate their seat. That's it, that would be, they've got to stay in the district.
The voting ballots are done by the county.
Yeah, no, but the county charges for everything, election. If just to print districts to vote in, it's higher expense than it is single.
Correct.
Okay. Let me cover that one just a minute. I'll put down, okay, term. Okay, because see, in vacancy, because when do you have to call a special election? Your charter would define it.
Which
Okay.
we specifically have special elections out because they're so expensive.
Correct.
The last charter.
So the
Very expensive.
Yeah, so the discussion, okay, for example, and I'll give you, is a great example. Up in Port Orange, when Chase Tremont, when he became state representative, had to vacate his seat. Okay, yeah, and then that charter, it defines the term, and when can the governing body fill the term, the unexpired term, or when does it have to go to the election? So that charter defined those two parameters.
Go ahead, thank you.
So that's just an example.
Doesn't our charter define that now?
Okay, I didn't look specifically at how that discussion about vacancy and when did you have to call an election, when don't you have to call an election?
I don't
The
remember.
charter now says, well, we just had it, that if somebody resigns, like, that the commission appoints
Right,
till the next
Till the
election.
next-
right, that's what it says now.
It says-
We had that happen before Mayor Gibson came in. The previous mayor had moved to Alaska and left us a vacancy. We had 2 applicants at the time, and we chose Gibson as, he was the mayor at that
It
time.
just happened with McGee too. McGee
Right.
was appointed.
Oh, McGee, no.
No.
McGee was elected.
He was
That-
elected.
But originally he was appointed, wasn't he?
No.
When Brady left.
No, he was elected.
No, Brady dropped out. He dropped out of the race.
Yeah, Bracy dropped out.
Okay, I know.
That was-
He
it was an
dropped
election
out
time.
Before the election.
Yeah, it was at election time and Bracy dropped out.
Okay.
So it was a non-contested seat, is basically what it was. It's just like they appointed Ron. Whenever you come in, you was appointed. Am I not correct?
No, elected?
Oh, you was elected? I thought you was appointed.
No, sir.
Okay.
No, sir.
Okay, we've answered question, I think we've kind of answered question where, what would be the terms, and then we've talked about the commission, do you want to change, those types of issues and things like that. Now, number 2, okay, is the discussion of term limits. Your charter does not provide term limits, so, and I know y'all probably had a lot of discussion about that. There are advantages, disadvantages of term limits. So I'm not getting into that discussion, but that's something that your charter does not state right now. It says they could run as long as they're elected, and the voters determine term limit.
Can I
That's
ask,
pretty much what your
is there
charter
anybody here that has a problem with term limits?
I think term limits personally are a good idea.
The
myself.
reason we did have term limits at the time, we did felt there wouldn't be enough qualified
People.
people.
To run,
Qualified that are willing to.
yeah.
And then we had,
Qualified and willing.
then we had a
Not
precedence
qualified.
of Mr. Goodrich,
We've had a
who'd
lot of
actually been our mayor for
elections where
what,
there was
21
no
years?
contest.
More than that.
Well, I'm lying, okay,
I see, he come in as mayor in the early 60s.
yeah.
When they revamped the charter, or recommissioned the charter, and he was there until the 90s, about 30 years.
I had a business in Parkville where we had a mayor that was 57 years.
Yeah. And oh, yeah,
Mayor last.
yeah.
Boy, he was funny too.
Yeah, he was a good guy.
But does anybody have any real objections to just leaving that part alone? Okay,
Well,
We'll
not
get to
really.
it. We'll,
I mean, I do like the idea of term limits so that we don't end up like the Senate with a bunch of seniors in it. But I do realize
I'll
that
put
we
it
have.
down.
It's something we can discuss.
That's a
We do have
discussion.
an issue
That's a
with
discussion.
getting people to run.
Okay, now, form of government, currently you have a commission, administrator, clerk form. It's defined very well in your charter, what the powers and the authority of both bodies are. Now, in the second memorandum I got, I went into a comparative nature, so you can kind of look and see, okay, what is each. There are 4 basic kinds in the U.S. Okay, and there's some hybrids of each of those, but generally. Okay, your current charter sets the size of your governing body. Okay, you've got 5. Okay, no magic number. Okay, some Some bodies are larger, but I don't know of anybody that's in Volusia County that's smaller than 5. Okay, if you go below 5, it's sometimes hard to get a quorum. Okay. Okay, we've already talked a little bit about vacancies and things of that sort. Some charters do define, when an election has to be held and when an election doesn't have to be held. When the charter is silent, generally it leaves the authority, unless it's overridden by state law, to the commission. Okay, and we've already talked about term limits. The election details you've got a pretty good section on elections and those types of things in your charter. You're using the uniform date, as I recall, election date. That saves you a lot of money. Somebody trying to call me, so I thought I turned it off. Okay. One of the items that you often find in charters is, it defines it when the commission itself, when you have an election, when they will be seated. Okay, and some are seated the first of the year. Some are seated within 30 days after the election. Usually that puts it the 1st of December if they're elected at the general election. Okay. Also, something that a lot of cities have looked at is that, for example, when do candidates run? Okay, for example, if you have the August elections, then you have the November elections. Okay, some cities have put all of their candidates on that first cycle. Okay, so there may only be 2 of you running. They are put in the August cycle, and then that race is over, and then only the ones that have to go to runoff are on the general election ballot. Other cities say contested elections are here. If there's more than 2 candidates, then then they are on the August ballot, and the only ones that have, then if there's a runoff, then they go on with the 2. The discussion always relates to back when that was put in charters, it was, what does it cost to hold an election? And if you're paying for the election, if I get everybody elected in that first primary, then I don't have to pay to be on the ballot in the general. So that's that's something you might want to think about. I was trying to remember how it seems like y'all have a primary and then the runoff is at the general.
Primary if there's more than 2 people.
2 people, right?
And then there's a 51%.
Yeah.
Right.
So it just relates to
2 people.
Okay, it just relates to how do you want to handle it. If the things of that sort. Some of the cities that try to get if you have all the contested people on the first one, then it then precludes that second election ever having to be held. So that's just one thing you might want to look at. We've already talked about the single member districts and the various things of that. One of the items that people normally look at on charters, and it would be my recommendation, is to always review the powers of your city commission. To be sure it is reflective of if there's been a change in the environment or if there's been changing in state law or some of those items. I always recommend you look at that particular section of the charter. It may be that, hey, it's very, we look at it and we say, okay, that's fine, but at least spend some time looking at what has been placed in your charter as their powers and authority. Same thing with your city administrator, because there may have been some changes that have occurred that you want to address there.
Can I ask if there's any objection about the way we have it set up now, where the city administrator basically takes care of business? The only time a commissioner can get involved with city business is gavel to gavel on an agenda item. That's the way it's set up now.
Yes and no.
Okay, please.
Okay, yes and no. As a citizen, I can fire the commission at next election. Okay? I can't fire the city administrator. The commission has to.
Correct.
So yes, I have a problem with that, okay? Because, not being able to sit down on a regular basis, face to face with Jerome, okay, and talk. The city commission might think Jerome's doing a great job. The citizens might think Jerome's not doing a great job. And the biggest issue I have is the oversight that the commission gives on what all happens. Because I've heard thousands of times since we lost Con, since she left, sitting right here, we ain't no better than the information we're giving you. Well, do your damn homework and go do it, you study it yourself. Okay? Don't just rely on what somebody tells you.
What solution would you have?
I don't know yet. That's the reason I'm sitting on it, to talk.
Okay,
Okay? But we need to go on down the road
Okay,
here.
I put on there the appointment of city administrator and all of that, because that is part of that section of the charter.
Right.
Yes,
There.
and it definitely needs to be
Y'all,
reviewed.
y'all Okay.
Let me think about, I wanted to change the minute to a city manager. Now, the reason to have a city manager is because there's groups of city managers and all, and you can go to all those meetings, you talk to other city managers and all. Otherwise, you're not accepted. And it's the same way about the mayor. All of the tax money now is being hoarded by the federal, state, and county. Cities have to beg for tax money.
True.
And we need to give more power to our city manager and our mayor to go to all these meetings and go to Tallahassee and all this and try to get money for the city. That's all. I mean, we can't raise taxes enough to run the city.
And I ain't gonna disagree with what you're saying. Okay, I'm just saying that from what I've heard, everybody seems to say, well, we ain't any better than the information that we're given. Well, you know what? If I'd have done that one time at the Space Center, they'd have run my ass out of there. If that's what, well, I ain't any better than what my guys tell me.
Yeah, my other.
That ain't my job, is to check behind them to make sure. Trust, but verify.
Yeah.
You trust them, but you verify what they're telling you is correct.
Charlie, we had that problem with two previous administrators, two of them. The last one that we had, she was brought in as a clerk, and she basically told us when we were sitting there that she would go through these schools and classes to get that certification. The previous one, nothing. I tell you, there was many times I wanted to
But-
put my foot.
what I'm saying is, and the reason what I'm saying, of what I'm
But we're
saying,
different now. We're different now.
I understand, but still, if the commission doesn't check, if you don't verify what you're being told, okay? They don't know anything. They're as dumb as that wall.
And that's why I feel it's important
Okay,
for them
and-
to be able to communicate with them.
You know, that's what, you're as dumb as that wall if you don't do your homework and find out yourself. If the only thing I ever relied on is what you told me, what Mr. Smothers told me, what he told me, and what Kerry told me, if I relied on that and didn't go home and do my homework,
How do you think all the annexations took place? I got pissed because I was told, da, 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 da. I was down in Fort Lauderdale when I got a call that says, oh, do you know what? We have a contract coming up for garbage control in 2 weeks. The contract, 2 weeks. We had 2 weeks to deal with it. It was a city administrator, and I'd been after her for almost 6 months to find out what the story was. My problem at the time was we had garbage trucks from the city and garbage trucks from the county coming up ripping up our roads. That's where I started on it. I said, screw this. We fired her right there on the spot. After,
My issue that I have by putting sole power, nothing against you, Jerome, to the administrator and the commission not having any say or knowledge of what's going on is we're gonna could end up in the same situation we just had when Con quit. And every commissioner up there sat there and said, oh no, I don't know where a file is. I don't know where this is. I don't know what we have. The commission has got to have communication and oversight of what the city clerk, administrator, manager, whatever you want to call them, is doing, because otherwise we could very well end up in the same situation and nobody knows anything about where the money is. How do we do things? How do we find a file?
how would you propose to fix that?
I think the commissioners need to have an ability to go to Jerome, Con, whoever the administrator is, whoever the clerk is, to be able to sit down with them
They
and
do.
say,
It's in the charter, they
It's
do
there
have.
now.
They have that.
according to the mayor, I can't do anything, I don't have.
No, they can ask any question they want
They-
to of the city clerk.
My biggest thing,
Yeah.
okay, is you need to have people
Yes.
sitting on the commission,
I'm in the middle
That's
of
willing to
a
do
meeting.
the
What's
research.
going on?
not necessarily, and I'm not saying take over everything Jerome's doing. I'm not saying that, okay?
Okay.
Jerome is the CEO of Oak Hill, okay?
All right, Charlie. We lost our forum.
Yep.
Recess.
Okay.
Back.
One of the things might be is that we need to elect people that's more willing to be in charge. The more willing to be a belly button that somebody can go to, okay?
Do you know how many times I've sit up there and and I could do nothing about it. I asked questions, and did you? Just, I mean, they're elected. You can't kick them out.
Well, you know, like I said, I can't fire Jerome. I can fire the commission. Okay? That's what I'm telling you. Okay? It's just like whenever I was on the commission, I was in charge of solid waste. That's what I was over. You know what? And we have it in the contract. They can be written fines today. But who's wrote a fine to our garbage disposal people? And how long has it been? I wrote as much as $1,000 fine one time to them. And probably once every 2 or 3 months, they got a $200, $250 fine for stuff that they was doing. But I had to follow them around to see what they was doing, take a picture of it. Okay? But I was in charge of solid waste. I took that literally. I was in charge of solid waste. You know, but Jerome can't go watch them. You follow what I'm saying? It's a commitment that you gotta do. If you commit to it, you do it. You know, and that's my only thing.
I can see solid waste. How do you deal with police?
We have a contract with the sheriff's department.
We don't want to talk about that one.
Yeah.
Hey, let's bring
Yeah, we
it
need to
back.
get-
Yeah, bring it back. You're supposed to be the mediator.
Right, well,
Tell me to shut up.
No, I will not.
I just want to hear
Shut
Charlie's
up.
opinion.
Okay, but let me just say this. What you really are talking about really doesn't make a difference in form. Okay, it
Exactly.
really makes a difference in commitment from the elected body to be prepared. And that way, you cannot put that in your charter. That really relates to who you are electing in the community and things like that. Now, like you said, you can fire a commission member, okay, but the commission can fire him at any point.
Exactly.
Yeah, and so you have to wait till their term of office expires before you can get to them. They don't. They can fire him at any point. So there are some balances that are there, and just to let you know, from that perspective, is that preparation is essential, and I've said that when I talked to, when we were doing parliamentary procedure with the commission back in the beginning of January. I said, you are responsible for being prepared when you come to a council meeting or commission meeting. That is your responsibility. Okay, it's not Jerome's responsibility. He's to give you information, but you've got to be prepared for that meeting.
That's it.
Okay, and if they're not willing to be prepared for that meeting, it doesn't make any difference how much information they get.
No.
Okay,
No, but it is the job of the administrator
To
to
get the
give the
information.
information as they
Correct.
have it.
Okay, and if they're not getting the information, then they need to be telling the administrator, you're not giving me the type of information I need.
Right.
Or I didn't, and things of that sort. That is the responsibility of the elected officials. Okay, so the thing is, some of the items that, so far that we've got on the thing I've got the powers of the commission, powers of the administrator, how the administrator is appointed. It's stated in your charter, but again, you need to look at it. How the individual is removed is in the charter, but you need to look at it. The elections process, that is one that you might want to look at. Appointment of the city attorney is pretty straightforward in your charter, but I would always go back and say, look at it, and things of that sort. Okay, and when I talked about the appointment of the city administrator, how many votes do you want? Okay, normally it's supermajority, and if I were an administrator, I wouldn't come if I didn't have a supermajority vote.
Quick question, if you have a clerk and administrator, which one would be responsible for getting, in the clerk would be the one responsible to get information to the commission?
No, the administrator is always the responsible party. Okay, the administrator can delegate, but there's the provision, I can delegate, but I'm always responsible.
Gotcha.
Good.
I remember that from my military training. I can delegate down, but I'm still responsible.
That's where I'm saying trust but verify.
That's right. Okay, delegate but I can delegate authority, but I can never delegate responsibility. I'm always
But
responsible.
at one time, we only had a clerk.
Correct. Now, the discussion right there begins a little bit different because normally clerks' responsibilities are a lot different than the administrator's responsibility.
And we were scan dollars back then.
Okay, based on our discussion, I think we've gone through this document, and I've got a listing of what I think that I heard y'all saying and things like that, and we can come back to them. But, when you begin to look at that document, okay, be sure that, because the other part of it, and I would like to have all of the commission group here when we discuss, what articles, the articles that we're not going to look at, because sometimes, this 5, and they may want to the next meeting add some items to this grouping because they weren't here, but I do think that we should at least give them the opportunity to
Do you
input.
think it'd be wise, based on this, just to pass that along to the members that weren't present
Sure,
today?
okay, Jerome will
Just
pass
to-
it on to them.
Just to let
Okay.
them know what our highlights were.
Could you talk a little bit about the powers of the mayor? That's a problem we've just had, a city commissioner trying to interfere with what the mayor was doing on thing.
Your chart, okay, let's look at the second memorandum dated February 19th. Okay, because the opening section of this discusses, what are the powers that were delegated by the charter, delegated to the city commission. Okay, and it talks about that the commission retains all legislative authority. Okay, so the whole body is responsible for all of the legislative authority. Okay, and it talks about how they will be elected. They're all elected at large. It establishes their qualifications, and then it establishes that boards and commissions and committees, okay, that the commission appoints the members of the boards and commissions. That's in your charter. It's not listed in that section where sometimes you think about it. It's over in, I think, section 7 or something like that.
I don't remember.
In the charter. And then in section 601, it talks about the appointment of the city administrator, and that's an appointment authority. And then in section 7, it talks about the appointment of the city attorney. But you've got a pretty good delegation of what is the responsibility.
Can a city commissioner represent the city to other governmental bodies?
Okay, no.
No. Okay.
Okay, unless the
We have
commission
one that's
itself.
been trying to
Okay,
do
let me
that.
say this.
No,
Let me say
that's
this.
not true.
Let me say this.
There's a state statute, don't worry about it.
We've always had that problem.
Okay, okay. In some cities, okay, for example, okay, let's say that they can delegate a commission member to represent the commission on certain bodies. Okay.
But that never happened with what you're discussing.
Okay, for example, the MPO, it's TPO now. Sometimes the commission,
Who's that?
Yeah, somebody's really wanting you.
No, you see, it says the it's my colonoscopy doctor.
Oh, mercy, I really want to answer that.
I got that procedure on Friday. Now I'm now on liquid diet.
I'm sorry about that, buddy.
Hey, right. Okay. See, but so what some councils and commissions do that have multiple bodies that they're sitting on, they will say, okay, the mayor will represent us here, but okay, commission member so-and-so is going to be here, and it's their responsibility to keep the commission informed about what's happening if they're delegated that authority.
TPO is a perfect example of that. I sat on it for 4 years. TPO is a Volusia County Transportation Authority. And my responsibility at the time, which is appointed by the commission, is to go and bring back any information about transportation activities and give them input. But I never did it, but I never went into the TPO and said, the city of Oak Hill, we want this. Never did that. But that's basically what you're talking about.
But that is from the standpoint, okay, if the commission does not delegate that authority to a member, they cannot represent that, okay, my understanding, that they should not be representing that they are speaking on behalf of the entire commission. They may be speaking for themselves as a commissioner, but not for the commission.
And what you're talking about, that's the way if you read the letter, I think that's what it was. I don't know, but I think that's what it was.
Okay, but the commission also can say, at a commission meeting, if any one of the commissioners is representing themselves as representing the city, the commission itself, and I've had this happen, where the governing body has said, that is your opinion, not the commission's opinion.
Right, exactly.
So that is up to them to govern themselves. Now, that's not something you can put in a charter, by the way. That's something there. Okay, your powers of your mayor are pretty well defined in your charter. Okay, he's a member of the commission. He exercises all of the authority of the commission. He votes on items. He participates in all of the discussions, all of that. Okay, he does not have a veto power, okay, which is not unusual for, most forms of government. Only the strong mayor form usually has a veto power. And that's the only one, unless you get into one of the hybrid types of situations. Flagler Beach has a hybrid form where they have a mayor, but she is not a part of the city commission, but she has a veto power over the things, but she is not the chief administrative officer either. Sort of a hybrid, strange form.
What'd she do?
Okay, she sits over where Jerome said it. That's it.
Okay.
It does not say in our charter that the mayor can represent the city, say in Tallahassee or something.
Right, it says he is recognized as the head of government.
Right.
Okay, he is recognized by the governor as the head of government for
Right.
military law, but it very clearly states that that's where he ends, it's not the administrative authority.
Right.
So your charter, it defines it pretty good, what are their
Y'all
responsibilities.
did a good job. I'm telling you, I just got a few things that I'm looking at.
Okay, so when I'm looking at your charter, when you look at the guts of it, some of it on the peripherals after 4, 5, 6, and 7, the rest of it seems to be, procedural types of stuff or things of that sort. Okay, it goes into forfeiture of office, your charter does. It goes in,
Can you talk about that one for a minute? Forfeiture of office? Forfeiture of office?
yes, there's a forfeiture of office provision in your charter. Okay, and it talks about that, about how the commission fills that seat. Okay, the discussion generally revolves around whether or not you have to call a special election to fill the vacancy that occurs on the commission, and usually, or when if a forfeiture or a vacancy occurs, some charters define that, say if it occurs here, and as I recall, I don't think yours gets into that level of detail.
No, it's pretty straightforward.
It's pretty straightforward, they point.
Yeah, it's fine, but I wanted to ask about, maybe the groups thought about an additional provision for criminal activities. The reason why I'm bringing it up is because we have had some issues with a commissioner that had, I think it was 6 or 9 pages of criminal history that we didn't know about until sometime later. And if there is some criminal activities, whether it's today, next week, next month, is there any objections to our raising that?
Yeah, Ron, we went over that, but the procedure on the criminal activity is notify the state attorney, let the state handle it, they'll suspend the person, and we stay out of lawsuits.
And
That's
if somebody
exactly-
is actually
And Lake
convicted
Helen.
of something,
Yeah, you let the state attorney handle that.
Yeah, Lake Helen had a provision where if found to have violated any standard or conduct or code of ethics established by law or public officials and has been suspended from office by the governor unless it's reinstated.
Yeah.
I put it down, so I was familiar with the Lake Helen
Yeah.
provision. Most don't even get into that. I had a city council member that the council wanted to remove them. They asked the governor to remove the individual for ethical violations and things of that sort. Eventually, the person resigned, but initially, he was going to force them, and the city attorney said, pretty much what you said, is that let the state attorney handle it and let the governor handle it.
Right.
Okay, but I was familiar with the Lake Helen provision.
I'm not concerned about ethics. We've had a couple of commissioners have been ethics. I'm not concerned about that. I'm talking about real criminal.
Still,
Let's
you
get
did
it.
it, still did it the same way.
well, if someone's actually committed a felony or a fine,
Misdemeanor.
a misdemeanor, if they are convicted of a crime of something, the governor or the state attorney is gonna take care of it.
Yeah.
But just because someone's charged with something.
You
if
just
you're
have to
not
turn it over to
convicted,
them.
You
let them
can't
handle
get into it.
When,
I agree with
when
Chair.
somebody's been elected by the citizens, you really
Yeah.
gotta be careful when you try to get rid of them.
I put it down for further discussion because I think, that provision in their charter is It basically, it says it's there, but it also gives the attorney and everybody else some latitude of how you're going to handle it.
Right.
Okay, it's more for the public standpoint that we're holding our officials accountable. But okay, your charter then goes on and it talks about the responsibilities of your administrator. So it's a very detailed listing of what's there, and it's pretty much aligned with, okay, if I were then aligning these up with other charters, and I didn't repeat every one of them, you will find this over in the council manager form, and many of these authorities you'll find in the mayoral forms. The commission form is different, quite different, because how the commission is formed, okay, it's formed to oversee. They're actually elected department heads from the standpoint of what they do. So understand, they are elected department heads.
We had that at one time.
Correct. But
Disaster.
that is, okay, and
Some
the weakness of that form,
The commission.
Who you got?
it's no uniformity. Okay, it's sometimes, and I don't know about Oak Hill, and I won't say that, but you tend to get into silos. It tends to be more corrupt because they have to cut deals to get their stuff done, and things of that sort. So if you go back and you read, that's why only about 1% of all local governments nationwide are in the commission form now. And I looked at some data from the Florida League of Cities. I think there are less than 5 left in the state of Florida. Okay, so, but I think you need to look at, make sure that all the things that have been delegated, that's a good place to look and make sure the thing. It also, there is an accountability discussion in your charter. The commission has the responsibility of holding your city administrator accountable. They are the ones who establish policy, not the administrator. He carries out policy. Now, he can recommend policy, but he has, now there's a difference between big policy and administrative policy.
Oh, yeah.
Administrative policy carries out the policy that is established by the commission. So that. Okay, now there's a discussion of strong mayor form of government. Okay, and it goes in and kind of looks at it from the standpoint that, and there are 2 varieties of it. Yes.
I'm sorry. Before you move on to that, I just wanted to bring out that I had reached out to the commissioners to see if there was anything from their perspective that they would like the committee to review. And I do have some information from them that I wanted to pass out to the commission, to the members here right now.
Great, we're getting skin ahead of time, that's good. Thank you.
Jerome, there's a couple of the stuff you passed out. If you, that says once the commissioners appoint a charter committee, they're out of the loop.
Yes.
Should not be consulted. We shouldn't be getting things like this.
This is public information.
I know, but it's a charter it's a commission dictating what the charter committee does.
Suggestions?
Well, I think that, they can, you should take their comments, and to some extent, yes, they're the governing body, but their comments also carry the weight of the citizen. Okay, they're saying, so in some ways, what you receive, okay, weigh it in that, you've got to weigh it that you know who they are, but you've also got to accept that as a comment from their citizen role as well.
Remember, you didn't have this 10 years ago. You started from it.
I would not accept anything from the city 10
Well,
years ago.
hey,
Commission 10 years ago.
But if, let's say, a bill came in as a citizen bill
And talk.
and brought this in, you would, that's how I'm saying, is that you know who they are, but at the same time, you've got, the citizens have the right to answer too.
And the reason I understand charter committee is supposed to be, there's a lot of things can be put in the charter that affects the commissioners directly.
Oh, yes.
They
just
were very
understand-
unhappy about it.
Okay, just to understand that that's, from that standpoint. So as you go through and you look at what are the authorities of the strong mayor form, okay, it's very similar to what you see in Washington DC and at the state capitol. There's the executive branch and there's the legislative branch. There is, the executive branch could have a specific agenda that is different from the legislative branch. And so that is one of the weaknesses of the form.
I need to take this, I'm sorry.
We lost that quorum.
Oh,
I've stopped talking. So as you look at this document, it does give you pros, cons, it gives you some of the issues, but strong mayor, just think about it in terms of what you see in DC. The president, the executive branch, does not necessarily have to agree with the legislative branch, and sometimes they can get loggerheads with each other on policy. So that is one of the weaknesses, and one of the strengths is always the discussion, I've got an elected leader. Okay, the weak mayor form, usually the mayor is a member of council. Okay, and so he participates in council, but he also oversees the day-to-day operation of the city. Okay, so there are some things there. Usually in a weak mayor form, the mayor doesn't have veto power. And all of the types of things that go on with the strong mayor form. I won't go through all the stuff there. The commission form, we've already talked about a little bit, that by the way, it's uniquely American. The commission form is uniquely American. Came out of Galveston, and when the hurricane hit down in Texas, and so they came and they formed this commission form in order to handle the recovery from the hurricane. So, you kind of got to think about what they were doing, and the reason why it came into existence is that they had an emergency, and so the governing body took on specific responsibilities as it related to recovery, and then that formed the form of government. And by the way, Galveston has abandoned it. They don't use it anymore. So, and that's why there are so few across the country today, because of the sophistication and all of that. And what it's good at probably is not in the day-to-day operation of a city from that perspective. It's good at when you've got some very specific things you're trying to achieve, and things of that sort. Okay. The final form is council manager, this room really is not conducive to do PowerPoints and things of that sort. Under normal circumstances, I would be using PowerPoint. Okay, so the charter review presentation, it goes through council manager form. It's uniquely American. Council manager is uniquely American. Now it's gone worldwide, but it was begun in Stanton, Virginia, unless you're in South Carolina, and they say it began in South Carolina. So, but the documentation was right there. It is an outgrowth of really looking at the boss systems that were in existence in a variety of cities all across the country. And so you had the Tammany Halls up in New York, and you had the group out in Kansas, you had the groups in Chicago, in a variety of places. And so the reformers said, we don't like that system. We want to go to a system where, okay, the manager is like the CEO of the corporation. We're the board of directors. The residents elect the board of directors. Okay, by the way, out of our early beginnings, most of our early people were engineers because of the infrastructures and the things that need to be done in cities. And even today, there are a large grouping of individuals that are engineering background, or they're specifically trained in local government management. So I won't go through every bit of the council manager form, but this document right here does a very good job of explaining it, explaining how it operates, all of that. By the way, your charter, if I submitted your charter right now, probably to ICMA, they would recognize you not as a general governmental, but would meet the requirements for a council manager form. How you have aligned it, how you've established the policy issues with your council, with your mayor, and with your administrator, it is really fairly cut and dry. And if you'll look in my memorandum, if you'll look what shows up in a typical for a city manager, okay, the responsibilities pretty much align with what my responsibilities were when I was in Port Orange. That uniqueness of yours is that title of city clerk. All right, do you have any questions that I can answer? It looks like that we've got some items right here that we know we want to talk about in long term.
I had a question for Jerome, if I may. I'm not really familiar with your background. Have you served in any other city capacity like that before?
In my former life, I was a council member and vice mayor in the city of Sebastian.
What, I'm sorry, what city?
Sebastian.
Sebastian Park.
Okay, Sebastian.
Yeah. So I have that experience from this side of the aisle.
Okay, thank you.
And I have, I went back to school and got my master's in public administration to get the administrative side of it.
That's what we've been asking the previous, to get some degree of education with. She always came back and told us that she was working. I never saw anything.
Well, they did give her a $2,000 bonus for completing some course. I don't know what it was, but I do know they gave her a $2,000 bonus.
Yeah, there are several different certifications that you can receive in addition to your degree requirements. The clerk's side of the house has a full continuing education side. Over on the manager's side, there's for example, I'm a credentialed manager. That's in addition to all of my education degrees, and I have to meet certain requirements in order to keep my credential status.
When you're hiring employees, you do a background check, right? For criminal, all that kind of stuff?
Yeah.
Have you ever seen a community where they do a criminal background for commissioners that are running for office?
No requirement under state law.
Yeah, the city can get in trouble there.
Yep.
For doing that.
When I advised the commission on hiring Jerome, well, not him specifically, but the city administrator, I said, go beyond just the normal criminal background check. Okay, because today, you may not show up on any of those lists, but there are other types of things that you need to be looking at. Okay, for example, look at your social media pages. Look at the, I always advise councils or commissions when they're hiring somebody at the top administrative level to look at their personnel files at their previous employment. Because a lot of times there are things in that personnel file that they need to know about. You know, for example, has the employee been disciplined? Is the employee constantly, tardy, or is there not meeting the job requirements and things like that? That may not show up, on the side when you're giving, because references generally are the big people that will give you a good reference.
The only thing, and I run into this, the only thing, going to a previous employer, legally, they can't let you look at their personnel file.
In Florida, if you're a public employee, they have to.
Okay, it might be public, but I'm just saying, my previous life, we could not, the only thing I could ask, would you hire them back? That gave you your answer right there.
Okay, yeah.
That gave you an answer. They said yes, okay.
Well, in Florida, okay, there are certain items that can be redacted, but if they wanted to go look at my personnel file, they can.
Okay, I didn't know the
Under
public.
So, it's one of the things you gotta look at, what can be redacted out of their file. You can't see their medical file for sure, but, I've had people doing background work on, employee that's moving somewhere else. That's the thing they wanted to look at. Okay, so we had to, for example, technically, I probably could say my personnel file, there's certain items in my personnel file, like my address, my telephone number, all of those things.
And
Because
Social
I
Security
was a hiring authority, and could be redacted out of it. But I'll give you an example. Okay, the wife of one of my department heads, okay, she worked for customs, but she didn't work for customs like at the port. She did the stuff like dropping into Costa Rica for drugs. She did things like investigating money laundering. Okay, we had to protect his file because people would try to come in
Retribution.
that were not good guys.
Yeah,
And as a matter of fact, they even, we got a note, we got a thing from the Fed saying, okay, we need to protect this one. There's some funny stories about it too, by the way.
Ken, quick question from we talked about the police section. One of the commissioners, and I know what his background is, he's suggesting we change the police to public safety, include law enforcement, fire, and EMT protection. Do we need to do that, or?
already have.
Okay, that's probably not, that, what I was thinking about, those types of things, when you remove them from charters, that's what people get all upset about.
Yeah.
Probably adding fire and EMS would not create that type of discussion.
Well, see, the chart right now, we don't run the fire department. We do run the sheriff's department because we pay them. So that's what I'm saying. The fire department and EMS is out of the county. They take no funds from Oak Hill.
But
Under
if
contract
the
services.
county decide to drop us, which they have done to cities, not Volusia, but
Yeah,
then there's nothing in the charter to say what we're supposed to do.
at that time, I think it would be up to the commission
Yeah, commission would have to come up with
to vote on it and bring it up.
Okay, do we want to set the agenda for next week?
Getting close to that.
Yeah, we went through, and I don't know why I'm talking all the time, but, we went through and we got a list of stuff there from, Mr. Parker.
Yes.
Okay, and we discussed going through the charter again, okay, and highlighting the things that everybody's got concerns with. I mean, I will tell you, I've read it in a whole. If I wasn't sitting on this committee, I'd have probably said, hey, this is great. Okay, but sitting on this committee, I'm saying, okay, well, maybe I wanna look at this.
Make it better.
Yeah, I wanna look at this a little bit more this way, look at it more this way. So I think that's some of the things we need to look at is the actual charter. You know, Mr. Parker was good at breaking the charter stuff down and letting us read it and see what it is. You know, but I think actual review of the charter, and we can go that line item by line item on the charter.
Or section by section.
Section by section.
And then you may say, okay, do we want to discuss section 1?
Yeah,
And everybody may say, we don't want to talk about that one.
we're done.
That'll be the quickest way for us to get through this charter.
Yeah, it's to go through
Start
section for
all
section.
those sections and say, and only focus on those that really get, you know, because some of the items, you know, it talks about preservation of the law and things of that sort, which probably, you know, we couldn't do anything about anyhow.
Some of it's smokes. You know,
And it's focused on the major portions, and that's where you're gonna spend most of your time.
yeah.
Is that good enough for agenda? Going section by section of the charter would have been
Yeah.
would have been my discussion, and then list those sections of the charter. We've got some basic stuff, but then let's say, okay, we want to look at sections 4-4.01 and 4.03 or whatever.
So
You're on.
our next agenda will be pretty much just an overview of the charter
By section.
to highlight the sections that you want to pay attention to.
Right. And could I ask, Jerome, do we have a whiteboard that somebody can get up and write on instead
That's
of?
why I was trying to find.
I know, I mean, that one, but, you know, that we can stand up and somebody get up here and write on it, on what we're talking about, and which one, do we have a
I
whiteboard?
can get one.
Okay, I mean, if you get us a whiteboard, it'd work out great.
And an easel.
Yeah, and an easel to put it on, and the white paper, see, that way, we can take that off, and that can be part of our record, if it has to be.
Absolutely.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And instead of erasable one, I'd rather have it that way, because that's part of our record.
Yeah. That's how we did when we went and, you know, we had the citizen meeting, we kept all of those and gave them to the clerk.
Right.
So those became part of the public record.
Well, right now, there's 9 sections in
Yeah.
the charter. So section 1 is purpose of the charter. Section 2 is corporate boundaries. Section 3 is power possible. I mean,
So that's how you go through it and say,
Yeah.
okay, do we want to look at those? And if you say, nope, we don't want to look at section 1 or section 2, section 3, then you
Okay.
say, okay, we've already handled those.
Yeah.
And then,
Moving on.
and then move on. And then that divides it up into those areas that you really want to focus on and look at in detail.
because section 4 is 2 or 3 pages.
Now, 4 is your legislative authority.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's going to take some time. But I think we can rule out probably the first
I will figure that out
3
next week.
Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
work on the next one.
When
I
everybody's
know what
here.
I did
Yeah.
was I made a comparison between, I made a chart, compared the 14 charter to the 04 charter, and then went article by article, and then turned around and had, you know, perhaps
Yeah.
a question of saying, why did you remove this
Yeah.
from, you know, the charter? And you say A, B, and C is why we did it, and everybody says, oh, that's okay,
And
that's a
see,
good
that's what I
idea."
like having them sitting here, because they was on the last one.
Yeah.
And they could tell us why they did.
Yeah, and, you know, that way, you know, I think we can get through it fairly quickly.
And if I don't agree, they can convince me.
Well, that's true too. They convince
And
everybody.
if we decide to do no changes, we've made $50,000. What
Probably,
it's gonna cost to
Yeah.
run it through elections.
yeah. But,
I like your idea, Carrie, and and your effort also, thank you, because he spent probably
Oh.
4 times as much time as we will this time.
yeah,
Charlie, motion to
But
close.
if you're gonna be on the charter, you review it yourself.
So you won't be present.
please.
Yeah.
I would go to
That's up
I would like to
that's
see
up
Mr.
this
Chairman.
This group, you won't be present.
Well, let's take an election.
Yeah,
When,
yeah.
Until we really get to roll.
So someone make.
If it's not inconvenient for you.
If
Is
there's a
there-
consensus, I'm fine.
Yeah.
I'll put it on my calendar, I'm fine.
Okay.
Motion to close, Charlie?
No, it ain't us.
No?
He's gotta ask for a motion, not
he
you.
did,
Oh, did you?
Well, I didn't make a motion for a close. I said before we close, we were talking about getting the agenda items together, but then, we wanted to know if he was gonna stay. And then,
yeah, you need a motion to keep him, for having next week.
right, to have him for next week.
I'll make a motion, he stays next week.
Do we have a second?
I'll say.
Any discussion? No? All in favor?
Yep.
I want to make the motion, when we get to the point, we're going to vote and say yes, keep everything so we can have the attorney here.
Yeah, let's have it just one time.
On that meeting, when everybody, we decide yes or no on things.
Okay, so we'll create a discussion, keep our notes, and then do a,
When we get ready to vote, yes or no on things, because every time he'll have some input, no, you can't say this word, you gotta do it this way, that
well, I
way.
believe in your paperwork, you said he's available at any time, Zoom. So I
Yeah.
don't know what he charges to be here for Zoom or not, but,
It ain't any different.
yeah.
Same thing. Make him come.
But I'm sure if we get into a heated discussion about a change, he could help clarify some things if we needed, so that we could move on to the next section.
But we need to get, yeah, before we vote and say
Usually.
yes or no.
Well, I
we
don't
need
know
to
if we need them every time we
No.
make a vote, because that could get very.
Well, no, if we hold all the voting,
Hold all the
Until-
vote until one meeting.
one meeting, and then have him at that one meeting to have the voting.
Done.
So, okay,
We have a motion to adjourn?
motion?
Go ahead.
Thank you.
Okay.
Second.
Any discussion? Good?
Yep.
All right.
Thank you.
No, I like that when you said that engineers usually get into city